The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. Cold, hard, relentless. Like the world had decided to wash away everything and everyone that didn't belong. On the corner of 5th Street, a man in a torn gray coat sat under an awning, watching strangers hurry by. His name, or at least the one he remembered, was Daniel Brooks. He was 50 years old, homeless for nearly 3 years. Every night the same routine: find shelter, stay invisible, survive till morning. But this night was worse than most. The city shelter was full. The benches near the park were soaked, and Daniel's hands shook as he tried to light a cigarette that had already fallen apart in the rain. That's when a voice called out, "Hey, you can't stay out here in this weather." Daniel looked up. A woman in a blue raincoat stood a few feet away, holding an umbrella and a flashlight. Her badge glinted in the light. "Martha Keller, City Outreach Volunteer. There's space in the old downtown shelter," she said. "You'll freeze out here," Daniel hesitated. He didn't like shelters, too many rules, too many questions. But tonight the cold was winning. "Fine," he muttered. Martha helped him into her van. The heater hummed as they drove through the empty streets. "You've been out here long?" she asked. "Long enough," she smiled kindly. "We'll get you something warm to eat. Maybe even a bed." Daniel stared out the window. The city lights blurred against the glass, and for a moment he caught his reflection. A face he barely recognized. Deep lines, tired eyes, a beard that made him look older than he was. When they reached the shelter, Martha guided him inside. The air smelled like old soup and detergent, but it was warm. Volunteers moved quietly between rows of cots. A man at the counter handed her a clipboard. "New intake?" "Yeah," Martha said. "Found him near 5th. The man nodded and handed Daniel a form. "Name?" "Daniel Brooks." "Age?" "50. "Any family or emergency contact?" Daniel shook his head. "No one." The clerk scribbled notes, then paused. "Date of birth?" Daniel hesitated. "June 4th, 1975, the man froze. His eyes darted to Martha. She frowned. "What?" Daniel asked. The clerk's voice was careful. "Sir, could you repeat that?" "June 4th, 1975. The man set down his pen slowly. "Wait here a moment, please." He disappeared into a back office. Daniel looked at Martha, confused. "What's going on?" She gave a nervous smile. "I'm sure it's nothing." But her tone said otherwise. A minute later, the man returned, this time with another staff member. Older woman, stern face, eyes sharp. She looked Daniel up and down. "Your name's Daniel Brooks?" "Yeah," he said. "Why?" Her lips parted just slightly. "Mr. Brooks, we've been searching for you for 30 years. The room seemed to tilt. "What?" The woman exchanged a look with Martha. "Please come with me." Daniel took a step back. "Hold on, what's this about?" "You'll understand soon," she said quietly. "We just need to confirm something." She turned to the clerk. "Lock the front door." As the door clicked shut behind him, Daniel realized the shelter wasn't just a place to rest. It was the beginning of a past he'd long forgotten. The sound of the door locking echoed through the empty hall. Daniel froze. The warmth of the shelter suddenly felt colder. Martha gave a nervous glance toward the older woman, who motioned for him to follow. "This way, Mr. Brooks," she said quietly. He hesitated. "Can someone tell me what's going on?" "You'll understand soon," the woman replied. Her tone wasn't harsh, just heavy, like she'd been waiting years to say those words. They led him into a small office in the back. A lamp glowed softly over a stack of yellowed files. The woman sat behind the desk while Martha stood near the door, arms folded. The woman opened a folder and pushed a faded photograph across the table. "Is this you?" Daniel leaned in. The picture was old, maybe from the 1980s. A young boy with messy hair and the same gray-blue eyes staring back. Something about the image made his chest tighten. "I don't know," he said. "Maybe." The woman's gaze didn't waver. "Your name isn't Daniel Brooks." "At least not originally," he frowned. "Excuse me?" She turned the photo over. A name was written in faded ink. "David Kellen, missing since 1993. Daniel blinked. "Who?" The woman folded her hands. "You. You went missing when you were 20. Your family reported you, but the case went cold. You vanished without a trace." He shook his head. "That's not possible. I've never heard that name in my life." Martha stepped closer. "Daniel, David, whatever your name is. Do you remember anything before the past few years?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came, just static. Blurred flashes, lights, laughter, a woman's voice calling his name. Then darkness. No, he whispered. I don't remember anything. The woman nodded slowly. That's what we thought. You've been living under a different name for 3 decades. Where did you get this? He asked, pointing at the photo. It came from our records, she said. Our shelter has been connected to the city's missing persons database for years. When you gave your name and date of birth, it matched an old alert. A family search file still marked active. Active? Daniel repeated. She nodded. Someone never stopped looking for you. The words hit harder than he expected. Someone had been searching for him. For 30 years. He rubbed his temples, trying to force his mind to recall anything that felt real. Faces, names, places. But there was nothing. Just the vague, painful sense that something terrible had happened long ago. Martha knelt beside him. Do you want us to contact them? Your family? He hesitated. The idea sounded impossible. I don't even know who they are. The older woman spoke gently. Your mother. She filed the report. She's still alive, Daniel's breath caught. Alive? Yes, she said. Lives 2 states over. We can make the call now if you'd like. He stared at the phone on the desk. It felt like a door, one that could lead anywhere or nowhere. What if she doesn't remember me? He whispered. Martha smiled softly. She never stopped trying to. Minutes passed in silence before he nodded. Call her. The woman dialed slowly, her fingers trembling slightly. She handed the phone to Daniel. When she answers, just say your name. He pressed the receiver to his ear. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then a fragile voice, soft and cautious. Hello? Daniel swallowed hard. Ma'am? My name is Daniel. He stopped himself. No, not Daniel. My name is David Kellen. A pause. Then the sound of quiet, uneven breathing. Oh my God, the voice whispered. David? His chest tightened. The sound of her voice triggered something deep inside. Flashes of childhood laughter, the smell of summer rain, a woman's hand guiding his through a crowd. Mom? He said, barely able to get the word out. The woman on the other end started crying. David, where have you been? They told me you were gone. I never stopped. Her voice broke into sobs. Daniel's eyes filled. He hadn't cried in years, but now it was unstoppable. Grief, relief, and confusion crashing together. I don't know, he said softly. I don't remember anything. Martha turned away, wiping her eyes. The older woman took the phone gently. Ma'am, we'll keep him safe tonight. Tomorrow we can arrange for you to come. When she hung up, Daniel sat back in the chair, shaking. His hands wouldn't stop trembling. 30 years, he murmured. How does someone lose 30 years? The woman stood, her face grave. That's what we'd like to find out. That night, as Daniel tried to sleep in the shelter bed, flashes of his past started to return, and one image wouldn't leave his mind. A locked door and a man shouting his name. The shelter lights went out at 11. Most of the other men were already asleep, their slow breathing echoing through the dorm. But Daniel lay awake, staring at the ceiling, unable to silence the storm in his head. David Kellen. The name didn't fit right. It felt like a shirt 2 sizes too small, familiar yet uncomfortable. He turned on his side, watching the rain trace lines down the window. Somewhere out there was a woman who claimed to be his mother, waiting for a son who'd vanished 3 decades ago. Every time he closed his eyes, flashes came, like fragments of a dream that made no sense. A boy on a swing, a man in a brown coat shouting something, the sound of a door slamming shut, and then always darkness. At some point he drifted into uneasy sleep, and the dream came again. He was running, down a long hallway lit by a flickering bulb. Someone was behind him, shouting his name, David! He reached a door, metal, rusted, locked from the outside. He slammed his fists against it until blood smeared the surface. Then came a voice, low and cold. You shouldn't have seen that. Daniel woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. His heart pounded as he scanned the dim room. The other men still slept unaware. He sat up slowly, breathing hard. What did I see? He whispered to himself. The next morning, Martha found him sitting by the common room window with a cup of untouched coffee. Rough night? She asked softly. He nodded. I keep remembering pieces of something, but they don't make sense. Memories. Maybe, he said, a door. Someone yelling my name. I think I was running from something. Martha sat beside him. You might be remembering trauma. People who disappear often block things out to survive. When your mother comes, maybe she can fill in the blanks. He nodded, though part of him wasn't sure he wanted those blanks filled. But Daniel couldn't stop pacing. Every sound seemed too loud. Every voice carried echoes of the one from his dream. At 4 p.m., Martha approached him again, holding a small brown envelope. This came by courier this morning. No return address, for me? She nodded. It was marked with your name, your real one. Daniel opened it carefully. Inside was a photograph and a short note. The photo was old, faded at the edges. A young man, him, standing in front of a large house with a white gate. Beside him was another man, face half turned away, wearing a brown coat. The note read, You were right to run, David. They never stopped looking. He felt the world tilt slightly. Who sent this? Martha took the photo. Do you recognize the place? He shook his head. No, but I think I remember that coat. From your dream? Yeah, he whispered. The man shouting my name, Martha frowned. Maybe your family can help identify him. Daniel stared at the photo again. His younger self looked happy, unaware of the storm that was coming. The man beside him, even in half profile, carried an expression that chilled him. Something about the tilt of his head, the slight curl of his mouth. It was the face of someone who knew a secret. That night he barely touched dinner. He sat alone near the window, rain hammering the glass again. The picture lay beside his plate, the words, You were right to run, circling in his mind. Right to run from what? Martha walked past and placed a hand on his shoulder. Your mother's arriving tomorrow morning. Try to rest. He nodded, though sleep was the last thing on his mind. When the lights went out, he slipped the photograph under his pillow and closed his eyes. The dream came back immediately. This time, the hallway was brighter. He saw the man in the brown coat standing by the metal door, holding something. A file, maybe. Please, the younger version of him shouted. I won't tell anyone. The man's voice echoed, calm but cruel. You already did. Then came the sound of a match striking. Fire, smoke, screams. Daniel jolted awake, coughing, heart pounding. He ran a hand over his face, trembling. What had he seen? What had he done 30 years ago that made him vanish? The next morning his mother arrives, and with her comes the truth about the night he disappeared, and the man in the brown coat. Morning came gray and heavy with rain again. The shelter staff had cleared one of the offices for Daniel's meeting. Martha stood beside him, holding a cup of tea neither of them touched. She's on her way, she said softly. Daniel nodded, his heart pounding so loud he could feel it in his throat. He didn't know what scared him more, seeing his mother after 30 years or finding out what she might tell him. A car door slammed outside. A few minutes later, the older woman from before opened the office door. She's here. Daniel rose, his palms sweating. When his mother stepped inside, the room seemed to shrink. She was small, thin, with silver hair pulled neatly back, and eyes that looked as if they'd cried all their tears long ago. For a moment, neither spoke. Then she crossed the room slowly, her hands trembling. David, she whispered, is it really you? Daniel's lips parted, but no words came. The name still felt strange, but something deep inside responded to it. A flicker of memory. Warmth, belonging, it's me, he said softly. She reached out, touching his face, tracing the lines time had carved there. Her hand shook, but her smile was real. I knew you weren't dead, she said, her voice breaking. They told me to stop looking, but I couldn't. Tears blurred his vision. I'm sorry, he said. I don't remember. Anything, she nodded. That's okay. You're here now, they sat together. For a long moment, she just held his hand, as though afraid he might vanish again if she let go. Then Martha, ever gentle, asked, Mrs. Kellen, do you remember anything about the night David disappeared? Her eyes darkened. Every second. She looked toward the rain-streaked window as she spoke. It was 1993. You'd been working at your father's auto shop after school. That night you came home shaking, pale as a ghost. You said you'd seen something. Something you shouldn't have. Daniel frowned. What was it? She hesitated. You said there was a fire at the factory across town, the one owned by your father's business partner, Mr. Landon. But when the police arrived, there was no fire. Just smoke and damage to one of the offices. Landon, Daniel murmured. Was he a man with a brown coat? Her eyes widened. Yes, always wore that ugly brown coat. How did you? He exhaled sharply. I saw him. In my dreams. He locked me in a room. His mother's hands clenched. That man ruined our lives, she whispered. After that night, your father confronted him. The next morning, your father's shop burned down. The police called it an accident. Martha leaned forward. And David disappeared that same week? Mrs. Kellen nodded, her voice trembling. Yes, the police said he ran away. But I knew better. Landon came to the house after the fire, said he wanted to help. I told him to leave. I never saw him again, and I never saw David either. Daniel felt a cold shiver crawl up his spine. The pieces were starting to align. The door, the fire, the man in the brown coat. He rubbed his forehead. Mom, what if I didn't just run away? What if someone made me forget? Martha frowned. You mean? He nodded. Maybe I saw something worse than a fire. His mother's voice cracked. Don't do this to yourself, David. You've been gone too long. Let the past die. But Daniel couldn't. The more he tried to ignore it, the more his memories clawed their way back. He looked at the photograph again, the one from the envelope. The house with the white gate. Do you recognize this place? His mother's eyes widened. That's Landon's estate, she said. But it was demolished years ago. Then someone lied, Daniel muttered. Because this photo wasn't old. It was printed recently. Martha's brow furrowed. Who sent it then? Daniel looked toward the window, where rain blurred the city beyond. Whoever sent it knows the truth about what happened to me. They sat in silence for a long moment. The ticking of the old wall clock was the only sound in the room. Finally, his mother whispered, David, maybe it's better not to know. He turned to her, eyes steady. No, Mom. I've been living without a past for 30 years. I can't spend the rest of my life running from it. He stood, pocketing the photo. I need to find out what happened, and why I disappeared. Martha rose, worry creasing her brow. Where will you start? Daniel looked down at the note again. You were right to run. They never stopped looking. He met her gaze. I'll start with the man who made me run. As Daniel prepares to uncover the truth about the night he vanished, a stranger begins watching the shelter, and someone clearly doesn't want his memories returning. That evening, the shelter felt different. Even the air seemed tense, like the walls themselves were listening. Daniel sat near the back window, staring out into the drizzle. Across the street, under a flickering street lamp, a black sedan had been parked for hours. Its windshield reflected the city lights, but Daniel could see the faint glow of a cigarette burning inside. He'd noticed it earlier when he walked his mother to the taxi. He thought maybe it belonged to a volunteer, but now, with the engine still idling in the rain and no one stepping out, he wasn't so sure. He turned to Martha, who was writing something behind the counter. Do you know that car out there? She followed his gaze. No. Could be a staff member's, maybe security. Security doesn't sit in the dark for 4 hours, he said, her brow furrowed. You think someone's watching us? He hesitated. Maybe. Ever since that envelope showed up, I've had this feeling. Martha leaned closer. If you're right, you shouldn't leave alone. Whoever sent that photo might not be a friend. Daniel nodded, though part of him already knew he wouldn't listen. After dinner, when the others went to bed, he quietly slipped out the back door. The rain had stopped, but the ground still glistened under the streetlights. The sedan was gone. He stood there for a while, scanning the quiet street. A single newspaper fluttered across the pavement. Nothing else moved. Then, from behind him, a voice. You shouldn't be out here. He turned sharply. A tall man in a long coat stood under the alley's shadow. His face was partly hidden, but Daniel caught the outline. Broad shoulders, clean-shaven jaw, and something eerily familiar about his stance. Do I know you? Daniel asked. The man didn't answer. Instead, he took a step forward. You've been asking the wrong questions. Daniel felt his pulse spike. Who are you? The man's voice stayed low. Someone who remembers what you forgot. Daniel took a step back. You sent that note? The man didn't deny it. You should have stayed gone, David. The sound of his real name hit him like a slap. Why, what are you afraid I'll remember? A faint smile crossed the man's lips. Everything. Before Daniel could respond, headlights swept across the street, a taxi turning the corner. The man melted into the shadows. By the time Daniel looked again, he was gone. He stood frozen for a moment, the chill of the night crawling under his skin. Whoever that was. He knew the truth. The next morning, Daniel told Martha everything. She listened silently, her expression grave. You're sure he said your name? Yes, and he knew about the note. She bit her lip. That means someone's tracking you. Maybe someone connected to this Landon guy. Maybe he's Landon, Daniel said softly. Or what's left of him. Martha shook her head. If he's alive, he'd be almost 80 by now. Then maybe it's someone working for him. She frowned. You said he looked familiar? Daniel nodded slowly, like someone I used to know. Or used to fear. Later that day, his mother called from home. Her voice was worried. David, a man came by this morning. Said he was an old friend of your father. I didn't tell him where you were, but he left a message. Daniel's stomach sank. What message? He said. Tell David that not everything burned in 1993. The phone went quiet. Daniel could hear her shaky breathing. Mom, he said softly, lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone. I already did, she whispered. Just promise me you'll stay safe. I will, he hung up, his mind racing. Not everything burned. What else had survived that night? That evening, he searched the city archives on one of the shelter's old computers. The fire report from 1993 listed Landon Manufacturing as the site. 1 casualty, 1 missing person. David Kellen. Cause electrical fault. Case closed, but buried deeper in the file was a scanned page labeled Evidence Record, Confidential. Most of it was blacked out. But one line remained legible. Recovered item, storage locker key. Marked ER-17. East District Depot. Daniel's pulse quickened. Martha, he said, standing up. I think I know where to start. She glanced up from her paperwork. Where? He held up the screen, pointing to the single unredacted line. The key. If it's still there, maybe my past is too. Daniel sets out to find locker 17, unaware that the man in the brown coat's shadow still follows him, waiting for him to remember the one truth buried in the fire. The East District Storage Depot sat on the edge of town, rows of rusted metal units stretching toward the horizon like forgotten tombs. Daniel stood outside the gate, rain dripping from his coat, staring at the faded sign that read, Open 24 hours. Martha had insisted on driving him. You really think something could still be here after 30 years? I don't know, he said, gripping the old printed report. But if someone wanted me gone, this is where they'd hide the proof. The guard barely looked up from his radio when they entered. Locker numbers are down that way, he muttered, pointing lazily toward the far end. They followed the narrow path between 2 rows of units until they reached down 17. The number almost rubbed off. The lock was old but still intact, the kind used decades ago. Martha crossed her arms. You think you'll just open it? Daniel knelt, examining the latch. If the police sealed this as evidence, someone must have taken the key. But the report said it was recovered from the fire scene, not from the station. So whoever took it... Martha began. Never turned it in, she sighed. And you don't happen to have that key lying around, do you? He gave a small, humorless smile. Not unless I carried it for 30 years without knowing. He stepped back, thinking. His hand instinctively reached into his pocket. And there it was. A small rusty key he'd found weeks ago in his coat lining, when he'd first come to the shelter. He'd thought it was worthless, just an old thing left from before. He held it up. No way. Martha's eyes widened. That can't be. Daniel slid it into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a click, the padlock popped open. The door creaked as it rolled upward, releasing a stale wave of air, dust, oil, and something faintly metallic inside. A single wooden chest sat in the middle, covered by a tarp. On top of it lay a burned photograph, half melted, but he could make out 2 figures, his younger self and the man in the brown coat. Martha whispered, Oh my God. Daniel pulled the tarp away. The chest was heavy. He unlatched it and lifted the lid. Inside were files, dozens of them, blackened at the edges but intact. The top one was labeled Landon Manufacturing. Employee Records 1993. He flipped it open. His own name stared back at him. David Kellen, apprentice mechanic. Next to it, typed in red ink, terminated security breach. Martha frowned. Security breach? You worked for him? Daniel's hands trembled as he turned another page. Behind the forms were photographs of machines, circuit boards, something that looked military. And at the bottom, a confidential memo stamped Government Contract Confidential Material Handling Division. He blinked. This wasn't just a factory. They were building something. What do you mean? Something they shouldn't have, he said quietly. And I must have found out. Martha looked uneasy. You think that's why you disappeared? Or why they made me disappear, he said. A noise echoed from somewhere down the row. The sound of gravel crunching. Martha turned. Did you hear that? Daniel closed the chest quickly. Someone's here. They stepped out of the unit. The alley between the storage rows was empty, but the faint glow of headlights flickered at the far end. The car again? Martha whispered. Daniel squinted. A black sedan idled just beyond the chain-link fence. His chest tightened. He followed us. Martha's voice trembled. We have to go. He nodded, clutching the folder. Grab the photo. Leave the rest and we can come back later. They ran to the car, rain pouring again. As Martha started the engine, Daniel looked back and saw the figure step out of the black sedan, the same tall man from the alley. The same stillness in his stance, but this time Daniel saw his face clearly, older, sharper, but unmistakable. Landon, he whispered. Martha's eyes widened. That's him. Yeah, Daniel said, voice low. He's alive. The man didn't move as they sped off. He simply watched, hands in his coat pockets, the rain sliding off his hat brim. When they turned the corner, Martha glanced at Daniel. If he's alive, we need to go to the police. He shook his head. No one will believe me. He's too connected. If those files say what I think they do, this goes deeper than one man. So what do we do? Daniel opened the folder again, his fingers trembling over the half-burned documents. Among them, a single business card had survived the fire. It read, Kellen Industries, acquired 1993 by Landon Manufacturing. He stared at it, stunned. That was my father's company. Martha's eyes widened. Then Landon didn't just ruin your life. He stole it. As Daniel digs deeper into the files, he discovers the shocking reason Landon erased his memory, and the truth about what really burned that night, in 1993. They drove back to the city in silence. The wipers scraped against the windshield, smearing rain into gray streaks. Martha's hands gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles pale. Daniel sat beside her, the folder open across his lap, the pieces of his stolen life scattered inside. He flipped through the papers again. There were letters, invoices, memos. The deeper he went, the darker it got. Each page told the same story. Landon Manufacturing had secretly taken over his father's company, Kellen Industries, and used its license to develop restricted technology for private buyers. The fire hadn't been an accident. It had been a cover-up. What were they building? Martha asked quietly. Daniel held up a blueprint, edges charred, something that looked like an ignition device. Don't! David had yelled. What are you doing? Landon turned, startled. The lighter in his hand flicked once, then again. You shouldn't have come here, son, he'd said coldly. Then came the spark, the heat, the noise, the smell of burning paper, and then nothing but black. Daniel jerked back to the present, clutching the dashboard. Martha hit the brakes instinctively. David? He gasped for air, staring out the window. I saw it, the fire. Wasn't an accident. Landon said it himself. Martha's eyes widened. And your father? Didn't make it, he whispered. I tried to stop him. He must have hit me before I could escape. I woke up later outside the building. And then, I think someone found me. Who? I don't know. Maybe someone working for Landon. They made me disappear before the police could question me. Maybe they did something to my memory? Martha looked horrified. That's why you forgot everything? He nodded. And why my mother was told I'd run away. They pulled into a quiet diner on the outskirts of town to think. The parking lot was empty, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the rain. Inside, they sat in a corner booth. Daniel spread the documents across the table. If we can prove this, he said, we can clear my father's name and expose Landon. Martha leaned forward. Then what's our move? He looked through the last few pages. Project codes, contact names, and one final document with a heading that froze his blood. Subject, D. Kellen, containment order. What's that mean? Martha asked. He read aloud. Subject has knowledge of classified operations. Do not eliminate. Transfer to private facility for observation and suppression. Suppression, he repeated softly. They didn't kill me. They erased me. Martha's voice trembled. You mean they did something to your memory? He nodded slowly. It makes sense. I woke up years later in a different city with no ID, no memory. Just a fake name. Someone wanted me alive but silent. Why not just get rid of you completely? Daniel's eyes narrowed. Because maybe they thought they could use me again someday. The diner door creaked open. A man stepped in, shaking off rain from his coat. Daniel froze. It was him. The man in the brown coat. Landon. Even after all these years, his face hadn't softened. Those same calculating eyes, that calm, quiet cruelty. He spotted Daniel instantly. A faint smile touched his lips as he approached the booth. Well, he said, voice smooth and chilling. I was wondering when you'd remember. Martha's hand went for her phone under the table. Landon's gaze flicked to it. Don't, he said flatly. You wouldn't make it to the call. Daniel rose slowly. You destroyed my family. Landon tilted his head. Your father made his choice. You were just a casualty of curiosity. You made me forget. I gave you peace, Landon said. You should have stayed lost. Daniel's hands clenched. You killed him. You burned the shop. Landon's smile vanished. You were supposed to die that night, too. The words hung in the air like smoke. Before either of them could move, headlights flashed through the diner windows, a black sedan pulling up fast. Landon's attention flicked toward it. Daniel grabbed Martha's wrist. Run! They bolted toward the back exit as the sound of gunfire shattered the silence. Dishes exploded. Glass rained down. Outside, they dove behind the dumpsters as two men stepped out of the sedan. Landon's voice echoed through the rain. Find them! Don't let him vanish again. Martha clutched Daniel's arm, her breath shaking. What do we do now? He looked at her, determination burning through fear. We finish it. Once and for all. With Landon hunting him again, Daniel must face his past head-on and expose the truth about what really happened 30 years ago, even if it means losing everything. The rain came down harder than ever, blurring the world into streaks of gray. Daniel and Martha ran through the alley behind the diner, their shoes splashing in puddles. Somewhere behind them, Landon's men shouted, their footsteps echoing like thunder. They ducked into an abandoned factory a few blocks away. Rusted metal doors, broken windows, the smell of oil and old smoke. It looked like a ghost of the one from 1993. Martha leaned against the wall, catching her breath. We can't keep running forever, David. He nodded, wiping rain from his face. We won't. He's not leaving this city alive. She glanced at him, startled by the steel in his voice. You're not thinking of it, he cut her off. I'm thinking of ending it. 30 years of running ends tonight. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the lighter he'd found in locker 17, the same brand from the fire photo, a symbol of everything Landon had taken. Martha's eyes widened. What are you planning? He looked at her. To show him what truth feels like when it burns. They didn't have to wait long. The low hum of an engine rolled through the alley outside. Landon's shadow moved past the broken window. Daniel stood in the middle of the floor, holding the lighter. Come out, Landon. The old man stepped into the light, rain dripping from his coat. His men fanned out behind him, weapons drawn. Always so dramatic, Landon said, voice calm. Put it down, David. This isn't who you are. Daniel's hands didn't tremble. No, you don't get to tell me who I am anymore. Landon smirked. Then tell me, who are you? I'm the kid you tried to erase, Daniel said quietly. The one who remembers now. For the first time, a flicker of unease crossed Landon's face. You should have stayed gone. You were happy or lost? Happy? Daniel laughed bitterly. You call waking up every day not knowing who you are happiness? You stole my life. You killed my father. You made me forget why. He flicked the lighter open, the small flame dancing between them. Landon's voice hardened. You think you're a hero? Those files you stole, they were government property. You have no idea what you're playing with. I know enough, Daniel said. You were selling weapons. You used my father's company to cover it up. And when he found out, you silenced him. Landon's jaw tightened. He betrayed the project. I was protecting something bigger. Daniel stepped closer, the lighter trembling slightly in his hand. You burned everything to protect yourself. For a moment, their eyes met, 30 years of buried truth between them. Then Landon's men raised their guns. Enough, he said quietly. End this. But before they could fire, a sharp click echoed from behind. Martha stood at the far doorway, holding the lighter's twin, the one from Landon's coat in the old photograph, and a bundle of soaked rags she'd found near the wall. Step away, she said firmly. Unless you want history to repeat itself. Landon turned, sneering. You won't do it. Try me. He hesitated just long enough. Daniel lunged, grabbing the nearest gunman and knocking him back. A struggle broke out. Shots rang through the factory. Sparks flew as bullets hit the metal beams. Martha ducked behind a crate, yelling, David, go! Daniel tackled Landon, the two crashing to the floor. The old man grunted, trying to reach for his pistol. You can't stop it, Landon hissed. Even if you kill me, there are others. Daniel's fist connected with his jaw. Then I'll find them too. Another gunshot tore through the air, this one striking a pipe. A hiss of steam filled the room. The structure groaned under pressure. Landon shoved him back and staggered to his feet. You never learn. Daniel looked at the lighter still burning on the ground between them, small, fragile, powerful. He met Landon's eyes. Maybe I finally have. He kicked the lighter toward the spilled fuel near Landon's feet. Flames roared to life instantly. Landon's men scattered, shouting. Daniel grabbed Martha's hand, pulling her toward the exit as the fire raced up the walls. Behind them, Landon's voice echoed through the inferno. You can't erase me. Daniel turned once at the doorway, eyes hard. You already did that yourself. Then they ran. Outside, they collapsed in the rain, coughing, gasping, watching the old factory burn. The glow lit the night sky like a second sunrise. Sirens wailed in the distance. Martha turned to him, shaking her head. Is it over? Daniel stared at the fire for a long moment before answering. For him, maybe. For me. It's finally beginning. He pulled out the last photo from his pocket, the one of his father, now smudged with ash but still visible. He smiled faintly. I remember everything now. Martha leaned against his shoulder. Then maybe it's time to go home, he nodded. Yeah, home. As the flames died behind them and the rain washed away the smoke, Daniel finally felt what he hadn't in 30 years. Peace. He'd lost his name, his past, and his home. But in the ashes of the truth, he found all three again.